What's up guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be having a look at the update to the post-BlizzCon balance patch. As every year we of course have a balance patch post-BlizzCon, and this time we have an update to it with actually a lot of changes. So I'm just going to read through it, give you my thoughts. I played a bit on it already, so I do have some feeling for the patch. I understand what everything that is introduced does. And let's get into it. So hi all, in the excitement before the culmination of this year's WCS finals, we think it's a good opportunity to revisit the proposals made earlier in the month with a fresh perspective. Special thanks to Wardy and his Balanced Test Mod Invitational, which showcased these new changes in action. After further watching games and following feedback, below are a few changes we'd like to make to the testing queue. Now the first change they do is a Viking health increase from 135 to 150, reverted. So I am not a massive fan of this. I think a Viking buff isn't a bad thing necessarily. Gives them a little more viability in the, against Storm basically. Makes them a little bit better against Stalker Colossus pushes, which are annoying to deal with. And in general makes it better to control against Viper and fungal, I guess, as well. So perhaps not 150, but even just a buff to 140 or 145 would already do something, would add a little bit of damage. Now the reason they cite for reverting this change is that based on feedback, we'd like to pull this change back for now due to concerns surrounding the Viking's subsequent increased power in TVT, as well as its increased strength in earlier parts of the game. That seems like a very odd reason to change it, as I think the initial change was mainly aimed at the TVZ and the TVP matchup. And it feels like TVT ruins a completely fine buff in that case. So I'm not a massive fan of this reversion, but if it's really an issue in TVT, then I guess, I can't say too much about it. I'm not a TVT expert, but we'll have to ask some Terrans about that. The tactical jump cooldown increase got reverted as well. I'm a fan of that. Battle cruisers, as they were doing this patch, were kind of falling out of fashion already, so it doesn't matter too much. They removed reverted the remove neural parasite upgrade. I think that's a good change. I think neural parasite is such a game-changing ability that definitely should be researched. I mean, if you need to research Storm, you probably should also research neural parasite. It's a very game-changing ability that I don't think a unit should start with. The tactical jump now stuns and puts the battlecruiser into a 1-second vulnerability phase before it teleports. Once again, this doesn't really matter too much, I believe. The battlecruiser style already kind of fell out of fashion. I don't think there's going to be too many things that will change it. It's a small, they altered it slightly, small change, doesn't matter too much. So their reason is last update we tested a variety of battlecruiser related changes aimed at broadening counterplay options against the unit. At the same time, we believe the ways in which battlecruisers are currently used are overall pretty cool. After feedback, we'd like to prune and alter our changes such that we improve the feeling of fairness when fighting against battlecruisers and at the same time preserve the core of current battlecruiser play. Thus, we'll be removing changes to tactical jump cooldown and reinstating the neural parasite upgrade. We'll also be keeping the vulnerability phase on tactical jump with one key alteration. Stun effects such as interference, matrix, fungal growth and abduct will no longer be able to cancel tactical jump and put it on cooldown, which I guess makes some sense. This change brings the behavior of tactical jump to be more similar to both strategic recall and mass recall. So before it was similar to blink, that when you were fungled you couldn't really get out of it. But now it's more like strategic recall, which you can just always get out even if you're fungled. Even if the neural is going towards you, you'll still jump out, which I think is I guess it is a good change. Well, after that they reverted the new upgrade found on the Twilight Council. Sundering Impact grants Zealot's ability to do +8 damage to enemies on charge impact. I think that's a good change. I did not like that was removed without any kind of compensation for the Zealot. I think the Zealot is extremely important in especially PvZ, PvT early defense, and removing that impact without any compensation I think is a mistake. They revert the adept health increase in the shield. Doesn't really matter for me too much. The amplified shielding to increase the adept shield from 60 to 80 has also been removed. I thought that upgrade was extremely boring. I'm glad they removed it. It was a very lazy upgrade, I think. It's like, well, we can't think of anything cool, so let's just add 20 shields to the adept. It sounds a little bit lame. I'm glad we don't have it. We'd also like to put a pause on these changes in favor of some alternate proposals. So let's just get into those alternate proposals once we get there. The new changes that have been added in this patch are the creep. Active creep tumors may no longer be cancelled. Last year we made some changes to creep spread in order to promote the gameplay surrounding creep denial. This year we'd like to try to take it a step further with this change, aimed at the dance we typically see between Hellions and Queens. We believe the change will increase both the interaction between players and the skill cap for all parties involved. This seems like a small change, but at the highest level this might be the biggest change, or one of the biggest changes in this whole update on the BlizzCon patch. It basically means that whenever you want to cancel a creep tumor, it's just not possible anymore, and it means you'll lose an active tumor if it dies, which, especially in the early game, so against Reaper Hellion, against Oracle, perhaps even against Adept in some cases, this will be really, really big, and this will really delay creep spread a big amount. Especially in TVZ, I can see a lot of potential issues where even getting creep to a fort base will be very difficult. This is a change that is, in my opinion, perhaps pushing it a bit too far, but I do believe creep is a bit too powerful. And a change that could be an alternate version for this would be, for example, when you cancel a creep tumor, is that you get a 25-second cooldown on the creep tumor or something like that. So there's still some punishment for canceling, but it's not as bad as losing an active creep tumor. But overall, I like the direction in which this change is heading. Perhaps these are not the right numbers, or this is not the right thing, but I think a nerf on creep is not necessarily a bad nerf. Now, the Overlord Numitase Carapace research cost increased from 75.75 to 100. This makes a lot of sense. Initially, this was done because robo all-ins were becoming very, very difficult to hold. But then Zergs figured out, hey, wait, we can just get Overlord speed, and we basically have free map pack for the rest of the game. And that's what they did. So I think it's good. It's good that it's a little more expensive, makes it more of a choice. Right now, almost everyone is getting Overlord speed. I think it should be somewhat of an investment. Of course, 25 doesn't make a world of difference, but it does make a little bit of difference, and especially gas in the early game is rather scarce. So I'm glad they changed this back after realizing it's not completely necessary. Makes me happy to see. Perhaps makes the opening phase in PvZ a little more diverse from the Protoss side as well, as right now we're basically only seeing Oracle and Stargate openers. I don't care too much about what they have to say about that. Now, the Infestor changes are probably some of the biggest changes we've seen in a long time, as they remove an ability, Infested Terran ability, and they give a new ability called Microbial Shroud. Now, it creates a shroud or a cloud that obscures ground units below, reducing the damage they take from air units by 50%. It lasts 11 seconds, the energy cost is 100, the cast range is 9, and the radius is 3. And the new upgrade found on the Infestation Pit, Evolve Microbial Shroud, Requirement Hive, and then Research Cost. This upgrade is really interesting. I played a bit with it yesterday. Carrier versus Lurker Hydra, Infestor, and the Carriers hardly did any damage to the Lurkers, hardly did any damage to the Queens and Hydras. Under the Microbial Shroud, the only problem I see with this is that perhaps Protoss Storm Carrier might still be too strong, as Storm just goes straight through the cloud. The best anti-air that Zerg used to have were Infested Terrans. They can still play Fungal Hydra or Fungal Corruptor, I guess, but in my mind, Carrier Templar should deal with this rather well. On top of that, with the previously proposed Broodlord nerf, the range nerf, I feel like the Zerg late game will be in a pretty bad spot. It's difficult to say what kind of unit compositions we'll see. Maybe we'll see a very big increase in the strength of Zerg mid-game. They'll be able to stay on ground compositions longer, because it does give more durability to their units, especially if low numbers of carriers are out. So this is a very difficult thing to predict how this will play out, but I think we'll see the late game, especially in PvZ. I'm not sure about TvZ, but in PvZ we'll see it shift a little bit back, either in favor of Protoss or closer to being balanced. As right now it's a little bit in favor, well, quite a bit in favor of Zerg. So I think it's a good change, but this is one that should be closely monitored, as you don't really want a broken carrier Templar late game, as there's only one thing more boring than Infestor Broodlord, and that's carrier Storm. So you kind of want to, you don't want that basically. So you should be sure, you need to be sure that the Microbial Shroud is competent enough at dealing with carriers, I think. The reason is, while we're not completely shelving the previously proposed changes to the Infested Terran, we'd like to try an alternate proposal. Blah, 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 blah. Doesn't really matter. It also doesn't protect from Colossi, even though Colossi shoot from very high. So that's nice, I guess. So I guess we're going to see a little more ground-based styles, perhaps, once this is out. It's from Protoss and Zerg. Lurkers with the new upgrades, the new range, should be able to do some nice damage. Alright, moving on to the Nidus Worm. The Nidus Worm cost increased from 50-50 to 75-75. This is a good start. I think the Nidus Worm was getting a little bit out of hand. Swarmhost Roach Nidus was absolutely insane. Yeah, nothing but love for this change. Together with all the other Nidus changes, I think this is a very good step in fixing a strategy that is clearly broken right now on the highest level. And yeah, I'm happy that they did it, honestly. Couldn't come soon enough. This feels like when I saw this change, this made me very, very happy. Even though it feels small, after a couple of Niduses, this starts to add up. In Swarmhost games, you'll see 10 to 15 Niduses pretty often. And, after 10 Niduses, that's already a lot of money. It's 250 that you need to add. So you're not extremely rich when you play it. When you play Roach Hydra Swarmhost, most of the time you stay on 66 drones. So I'm pretty happy with this. Moving on with the Zealot. The charge upgrade no longer provides Zealots with +8 damage on impact. Instead, it increases Zealot movement speed from 3.15 to 4.72, up from 4.13. So base movement speed gets way higher. You still have the charge ability, but it doesn't add the 8 damage. I've been doing some testing. It feels a little more difficult to hold some of the pushes by Terran, as a lot of those rely on getting that charge damage in and then waiting for the cooldown of charge, then attacking again. But in general, I like this change. The Zealot did feel very, very fast, so perhaps a small nerf in that speed wouldn't be too bad, and maybe instead of not having any damage, maybe just do +4. It's difficult to say. Another thing I'm a little worried about is Zerg all-ins against Ravager Ling or Roach Ravager Ling all-ins. Usually charge, or sometimes charge, can play a big role there in killing the Ravagers or killing the Lings quickly, and not having that +8 damage. The speed actually doesn't do too much against Zerg in that kind of phase, so I'm afraid those might be harder to hold, but we'll have to see. It's difficult to predict, of course. Moving on to the Adept, we see Resonating Glaives reworked. Instead of increasing attack speed of the Adept by 45, it will increase the attack speed of the Adept by 60% for 6 seconds after completing a psionic transfer. We view Adepts as having two primary problems. Its role overlaps that of the Zealot, and is viewed as having low utility in late game, which we believe is due to the Zealot overshadowing it. Not only do Zealots and Adepts have similar matchup against enemy units, they both control and function similarly by being strong frontline attack move units. This is especially exacerbated by the previous version of the Resonating Glaives upgrade, which highlights the raw frontal power of the Adept and draws away from its distinctiveness and coolness, which we believe comes from its psionic transfer ability. Thus, the new direction we'd like to take with the Adept is to rework the Resonating Glaives upgrade into one that moves it away from the direction of being a strong pusher, and towards one that highlights the Adept's defining characteristic, psionic transfer. With this newly designed upgrade, Adepts will achieve only 92% of its previous upgraded damage when used optimally in a frontal fight in the long term. However, it will become much more effective at burst damage, for example after a shade-in for surprise worker harassment or when you need to break a marine tank push. At the same time, it will still have obvious counterplays such as Banelings, Widowmines, Building Wars, or running away until the attack speed bonus runs out. Well, I think this is a really cool change. I played around with it yesterday, adapt skill stuff really quickly if they have a 60% attack speed increase. It felt very fun. I can imagine it won't be very popular, especially to Zerg players. I think against Terran it won't matter that much, as they usually have stuff out in time to deal with it, whether that be mines or a tank is usually fine against that. But Zergs will be having a hard time, and I do feel that adapt builds might be making a small comeback. So once again, another change that will add perhaps some diversity in the PvZ early game that is now so dominated by oracles. Of course, it's difficult to say if it actually will result in a change in the early game, or if Zergs manage to adapt to it. But I like this change a lot. I think it's cool. It's a very it's something new. We haven't seen it before, and this change together with the microbial shroud of the infestor are my two favorite changes. I think they're I find it very cool when they add new abilities or add a twist to a already existing ability. Now, going over to the final changes, the mothership added heroic tag. Neural Parasite can no longer target heroic units. I think this is a silly change. I know a lot of Protosses will think, oh, why would you betray your own Protoss brothers? I don't think there should be hero units in the game. I think it's already stupid that you can only build one mothership, or that there's a unit you can only build one of. I feel like neuraling a mothership should always be possible. If you want to make the mothership harder to neural, perhaps you should change the way it moves. Right now, when it accelerates, it makes a little... It doesn't go in a straight line, but it goes in like a half circle or something like that. It says very slow acceleration and Sporad running away. Perhaps you change that, but adding a heroic tag just... Yeah, it seems very yikesy to me, and a weird band-aid to a rather easily fixable problem. As well as that Neural is getting nerfed already with the range in the post-BlizzCon patch. So this change I'm really not a fan of. So in general, I think the changes are rather positive. I think they're heading in a good direction. They're identifying the correct problems. Sometimes I do not necessarily agree with the proposed solutions, but with every update we see, and whenever I talk with the balance team, they seem to be moving closer to what I believe are the true solutions to the by them identified problem. So I'm happy to see this patch, and I'm looking forward to playing it. Thanks for watching, and see you boys next time.